All right. I think we're live, guys. So, welcome, everyone. Um, so this is gonna be the very first live stream that I do start on this channel. So I'm gonna start with this one. And we're gonna have one every single week from now on, where I'm gonna basically go over all the pairs that I'm looking at for the week, all the potential setups that I see for the week. After this week, I'm actually gonna go over the signals that I sent in the group as well, so we can see how they play out, if they did play out, if they didn't play out, and look at the win rate of the signals group. Those would be in the Discord. The Discord itself isn't open yet. I feel like I will open the Discord at maybe 100 to 500 subscribers, sometime in between there on the YouTube. I'm gonna have the Discord open so you guys can join. Obviously, if we are doing signals, it would be for a fee, but that we can probably look over time. So, looking at news this week, now one thing I will say is that the reason that we look at the forex calendar, well, the economic calendar, is to see what days in the week actually has volatility. Because to trade, in order to trade, especially if you're a trend trader, which I am, you need to have volatility in the market. And news is one of the biggest catalysts for the volatility in the market. It helps you know when the market is going to move, on which day and which pair. So looking at news here, we'll see on Monday we have USD news, we have Euro news, and we have Canadian dollar news. On Tuesday, we have Canadian dollar news, USD news, and AUD news. And Wednesday, we have USD news. Now, the reason I'm not looking at Thursday and Friday is because as a swing trader, and when I look at weekly profiles, I want the high or low of the week to be created on a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. And then I want to be trading and catching the weekly range from there. So it's basically like a one shot, one kill setup, right, from ICT. My strategy on a whole, I actually learned from someone called Arjo IO Trading. I also have his YouTube linked up in my in my YouTube, so you guys can go over to him to learn from him as well. So looking at these pairs, we have USD, Euro, Canadian, AUD. We're going to go over the pairs in these currencies, and these pairs are what we're gonna be looking to trade for this week. So let me switch you guys over to TradingView so we can get right into our analysis. All right, let me actually make sure that it's switched over properly. Nice. 1 second, guys. Is this switched over? I honestly don't know. It says that it is. I don't see it on the live stream though. Ah, it is okay. There we go. So I always recommend doing a top-down analysis. Top-down meaning coming from the monthly and going down. Whether you're a swing trader, a scalper, it really doesn't matter what you do. But the higher time frame is always very important in whatever is going on the lower time frame, because all the lower time frames are subservient to the higher time frames. So it's like the higher time frames are where the institutions operate, and the lower time frames are where, well, you could probably say the algorithms operate, right? So the institutions want to buy, then the algorithms will price in buying on the lower time frames. So you always need to know what is going on the higher time frame. Now, here looking at the DXY, let me actually flag this. I believe we said we're doing AUD, we're doing Euro, and Canadian. So I know exactly what I'm going over. Right. So firstly, looking at the DXY, on a monthly, this is practically a consolidation, right? We've been in this range for quite some time. We don't really have any fair value gaps following through. So you see price came in here, we rejected. We had a small push lower and then we just continued higher. Complete disrespecting this fair value gap. which is a good sign of bullishness. In the current month, we've actually swept this previous month low right here, and then we're moving higher. So that by itself is probably a good argument for saying that this is bullish. On the weekly, last week we actually created a weekly fair value gap higher. We don't have many opposing PD areas, so I would say that we're probably trading into this weekly high. It's probably our current drawn liquidity. This weekly high is probably our current drawn liquidity on the DXY, and we could definitely move into that drawn liquidity from this low right there, from this fair value gap right there. Now, I don't expect price to actually come back into this fair value gap as yet, because this is more of a breakaway fair value gap. Why do I say it's a breakaway fair value gap? That's because, let me actually open up my chart so I can see it. Okay. Why do I say that it's a breakaway fair value gap? That's because this candle closed above this high, and we also have a very long wick at the bottom, sitting that, which demonstrates that we did come back into this gap, the gap that was here, and we rejected quite strongly from it. So this move here, let me get my this move right here, this move down here, is actually many fair value gaps on the lower time frame. All right. So if I were to go into like a 4 hour time frame, you would see that we have many fair value gaps higher on this time frame, which is that move, right? So price could definitely continue from fair value gap that is not actually present on the weekly time frame until we actually meet that drawn liquidity. Now, after meeting the drawn liquidity, I would no longer be inclined to trade a lower time frame fair value gap. I would actually wait for price to either come back into this fair value gap or into an overlapping an overlapping line of defense, which we don't have here. All these different terms we will go over, and you guys will learn over time. Probably as you ask questions when we're done with the forecast, we can go over these things. You can ask your questions, and I will answer to the best of my ability. All right. So on the daily, on the weekly, we're definitely bullish. So we're definitely trading higher. On the daily, we can also see that we created a daily fair value gap on Friday. So we left this fair value gap here. We're actually trading very nicely above this high. We closed above this high, which is a good sign. So I would definitely want to see price come back into this. And it's possible that it doesn't, because again, this is another breakaway gap. So it's very possible that on Monday we trade higher, then we trade back into this fair value gap, then we actually continue higher. But overall, I would say that the DXY is overall bullish, which means that on we know exactly what we want to do on the USD pairs, what exactly we're looking for on the USD pairs. All right. So going over to the USD pairs, if we say that the DXY is bullish, if we're looking at the indices, we would want the indices to be bearish. Now, as of recent, the indices have not been moving subservient to the DXY at all. They have actually been doing their own thing. So the indices have actually been bullish, while the DXY has also been bullish, which is quite interesting. YM was the only index that was actually looking bearish for some time, but I believe that it traded straight through the bearishness. So looking at ES, we can see that we reacted very nicely to this monthly fair value gap, and we've continued moving higher. On the weekly, we have created a fair value gap right here. This is also very likely a breakaway gap, but we could possibly trade back into this, considering that we have this very tall wick up here. On the daily, we can see that we are currently in a daily fair value gap. We tapped in here on Thursday, and we've still been in here on Friday. We haven't fully disrespected this fair value gap as yet, or confirmed it by creating another fair value gap higher. So we can just keep in mind that this fair value gap is here. I don't trade indices as of right now, but if I were to trade this, I would probably wait for this fair value gap down here because it's very close. I'll wait for this and then I'll take this setup, right? But overall, this would be low probability to me, considering that DXY is moving higher. I would not, I would not actually trade this because I want to see this move lower. Looking at NQ and ES are very, very similar. We don't have that same very nice respect into the monthly fair value gap as we see on ES. ES literally went into it and then came out. NQ actually closed the entire fair value gap before it did move higher. There was this gap that it reacted to as well, which is fine. On the weekly, we can see that we have a much bigger wick on this weekly fair value gap, probably citing that we are going to come back into this and probably reaction this if we are to continue bullish, that is. On the daily, we have a daily fair value gap actually going back into this weekly, which we don't have on ES. So ES, you can see that that price is very tightly moving back down. On NQ, we have pretty much disrespected this fair value gap, right? And we have created a daily fair value gap against it. So this would make this is something that you don't want to see if you're trading a fair value gap. So if I'm trading a fair value gap on the daily, one thing I don't want to see is a daily fair value gap into my daily fair value gap, because fair value gaps show intention. It shows that the big players are in the market. So if the big players really and truly are pushing price higher here and they want to continue pushing price higher, they would not be creating fair value gaps pushing price lower, because really and truly you want to be trading in the direction that the fair value gaps are pointing. So I can see that this is a daily fair value gap lower. Now on Monday we could have something like this. This would be in the best world that we come into this, where we reject, we come into this and we reject, and then we continue going higher. This would be probably the best scenario from this price action. But based on DXY and wanting price to go overall lower, I could see that we could probably see this and then I run through this, right? But we would need enough confirmation to actually run through the weekly fair value gap. So I would say I really would not trade this, because this is in a very interesting place and we could probably see some kind of consolidation coming out of this for next week. YM, as I said, this was the one pair that was a bit bearish until I think last week. We kind of went straight through that bearish area. So in this monthly leg, so this leg right here, this monthly leg, let me actually use my highlighter. In this monthly leg, right, this price action right there, we have two fair value gaps down here, which we haven't actually reached into at all. We haven't come into this fair value gap, or we have this overlapping area here as well. We haven't come back into this. So price could still be looking to draw lower into these before moving higher. On the weekly, we actually created this fair value gap lower, which is what I was talking about. We did not follow through from it. As you can see, price has closed in entirely that fair value gap. So I would say from the weekly that we really and truly are aiming for this high. On the daily, we are also creating fair value gaps higher. So the daily is also suggesting that we are moving higher. In this most recent price leg, we have a fair value gap right here. So if price is to continue higher, we will probably be going higher from here. So since this is an actual fair value gap, not a breakaway gap, since price did not close above this high, we could see price trade back into this and then move higher if you were looking for that. But again, like I said, the DXY is also bullish. So these pairs should be bearish. We should be trading actually low on them. So I feel like this is all these pairs are pretty much low probability setups. You can probably get much better setups than these. On AU, so again, we're looking for bearish pricing on AU, EU, and GU. We'll be looking for bullish pricing on UCAD and UJ as we're following the DXY. So on AU, we can see that we did respect this this previous swing high on the monthly. We have this fair value gap here in this leg higher that we did respect with this candle. So I would say that we're drawing to this high overall. On the weekly, I believe we have a very small fair value gap right here, which we do. It's not big at all, but we do have this fair value gap right here in this leg higher with a strong leg. The reason price may not be coming into this fair value gap is because we also have this order block which price came into first, and price is seemingly reacting off very nicely. On the daily, on the daily we have no signs of bearishness. We are currently in a bullish fair value gap. I was actually looking at this bearish fair value gap last week for a trade lower, and it didn't happen. So currently we can say that AU is bullish. But we don't really want to be trading AU as a bullish pair since we know that the DXY is also bullish, right? That means that this will be moving against the DXY. Therefore, I won't be looking to participate in AU for this week unless we create a fair value gap lower and then come back into it to trade lower. EU. EU is actually one of the best looking pairs when it comes to the USD pairs because it looks very similar to the DXY. So we had this bullish value gap, which we disrespected right here, and we're currently disrespecting the previous monthly candles high to move lower. So on the weekly, we can see that we have disrespected this fair value gap on the weekly and created a new weekly fair value gap, which we will more than likely trade into before trading lower as price did not close below this candle. However, we do have a very long wick here, which could be again lower time frame fair value gaps moving lower, and price could decide to come into one of these lower time frame fair value gaps and then just continue lower. On the daily, we already have a fair value gap created right here. So it's very possible that price just comes into this and reacts instead of actually coming all the way up here. But we will react to whatever price gives us. So on these, I will actually set my alerts. Since this is subservient to the DXY, I would be looking to see if we can get some price action to continue lower on EU for next week. As for GU, we are also, we currently actually reacted to this monthly bullish fair value gap. We were moving higher, but we have not really closed this candle. We have not really created a fair value gap higher as yet. On the weekly, we've been rejecting highs, so rejection, rejection, rejection. Now we seem to be starting to move lower. We have this weekly fair value gap sitting here. We haven't fully disrespected it, but we are disrespecting it because we have one nice tap into there, and this one did not create much of a reaction. So the next candle is actually moving lower. If you're disrespecting this weekly fair value gap, then our target on the GU for the weekly would be right here. We'll be going to this low. On the daily, we can see that we do have a bearish fair value gap. I did trade out of this bearish fair value gap last week, so this was basically my USD trade of last week. At first, we did have a loss right here trading this. We took this trade and it didn't quite hit our target. It didn't quite hit our target, but later on in the week we had this setup, which was pretty good and hit our target very comfortable. So looking to I'm looking to actually trade this lower this week from this fair value gap maybe. This is currently looking like a breakaway gap, so there's a chance that price doesn't come back into it. If Monday does indeed trade a bit lower, we could probably get a trade lower, come back into this, and then move lower. But overall, we are looking for bearish pricing on GU, very much like this. But if we have a trade back into the fair value gap on GU and EU, keep in mind that I will take EU over GU because EU has much less resistance. So these are low resistance. This is low resistance liquidity, right? This is what you call low resistance liquidity because there are no fair value gaps. It's just a bunch of swing lows that are very close to each other. So this is just a whole bunch of liquidity back here. As for GU, we're actually inside of a weekly fair value gap, meaning that we have very strong resistance opposing our current idea. So if we have a trade on both EU and GU, I will be taking EU primarily. Now, USD card, we are looking for higher prices according to the DXY. We can see that the last month was bearish. We can see that this month seems to be reacting to that to this high. We have no real fair value gaps. We are currently in quite the consolidation. Been in the consolidation since 2022. On the weekly, we're also consolidating. There's really not much to see here at all. Last week we reacted to this high. And this swing high right here. So that could possibly signal that we're looking to target these lows. These lows. Let's take the closer one. Let me actually change this. All right. On the daily, we have nothing to trade from, honestly, because there are no fair value gaps. Fair value gaps are the core of my strategy. So without fair value gaps, I really don't have a trade. So to me, this entire price action just looks very, very low probability. So we're gonna just move over to UJ. On UJ, we are moving higher. We've been moving higher consistently on the monthly. We have no fair value gaps to look at. So move to the weekly. On the weekly, we also have no fair value gaps to look at in the current legs, which kind of makes the legs very, very weak, makes the legs not strong. But we currently have this expansion higher. If this weekly candle does go higher, we will have this weekly fair value gap created here, overtaking this high, which will signal that we are going to continue bullish. On the daily, on the daily, we have definitely been moving higher. We expected this fair value gap right here. Very nice respect. Even though we did dig very deep into this order block before moving away, we have a fair value gap created right here. I would say that again that this is a breakaway gap. I wouldn't expect price to come back into this. I would expect Monday to do something like this, maybe trade a bit higher, come back here, and then do that. But overall, we are looking for overall higher prices on UJ. So definitely, I will be looking at this pair this week to see whether or not I can get a setup of it. On gold, we're moving overall higher. Gold, silver, and oil. I don't really trade them with regards to the DXY. I trade them as their own, the commodities. Not for any specific reason, but other than my experience with them, states that they don't always move subservient to the DXY, and that doesn't always make them low probability either. So I kind of take them as their own pairs. So on gold, we are overall bullish. I would say that we're probably coming back into this fair value gap right here on the monthly. We haven't really traded all the way into it. We're still practically playing around before coming in there, probably collecting some orders. Meanwhile, on the weekly, we have very choppy price action, so not much to see here. On the daily, we had a couple fair value gaps lower that we could have traded from. Um, I believe I did catch this trade right here, this move lower. I also caught this move lower of this order block right here. Um, We also got this move lower, this reaction right here. So on gold, I would actually wait for a bearish fair value gap. We're actually, well, partially creating one here. If we do create one here, it would be good, but it's not fully created yet. I'd want to see the daily give me a bearish fair value gap moving into the monthly time frame. And then when we get into that monthly fair value gap, I want to see a reaction on the daily. So daily fair value gap higher, so I can trade price higher. So on gold, we really have nothing to look at currently. So I'm gonna move over to silver. Silver on a monthly is a bit similar to gold, but the monthly fair value gap is really much farther away. We aren't anywhere close to this. So we can just mark this out for now in this leg. Higher, this is also an overlapping defense, overlapping gap, because we're overlapping with this mitigation block right here, mitigation order block. On the weekly, we are seemingly disrespecting this fair value gap and this overlapping defense right here. So if we do start closing below this fair value gap or creating weekly fair value gaps lower, that would be a very clear sign of disrespect. But right now we seem to be trying to, well, we seem to be consolidating. Let's put it that way. We're very much consolidating in this in this price action right here. Last week we didn't have much to do. There was a very nice setup here, right here, that sell. This reaction to the fair value gap was really nice. On the daily, we have no fair value gaps to trade from, so no direction. So we're just gonna leave this as is for now. If we do get trade lower and then trade back, I would absolutely love to see that. But we're gonna see how this develops during the week. I've already put actually both of these into my, no, yeah, I put both of these into my watch list so I can monitor them. On oil, we have been pretty much consolidating for quite a while in this overall area. Um, the monthly doesn't have much clear context apart from the fact that we did trade above these highs and reject pretty harshly lower. We did create this, but we did not create a fair value gap. As you can see, price has already traded back up. On the weekly, we have not created any fair value gaps, maybe this tiny one here, but we're gonna disregard that for now. We're gonna see if we do create a fair value gap from this. We had a fair value gap here, which we reacted to. After a couple taps into it, one, two taps into it, we did react and create a new low, was which seems to have had a very strong reaction back up, which would be lower time frame fair value gaps higher. So on the weekly, we have no direct context. On the daily, however, we can clearly see that we are moving higher in our current leg, which would be this low to this high. I don't think we have any fair value gaps. In fact, we do have a fair value gap right here in the current leg. So if we are to move higher, we could go higher from this daily fair value gap right here on oil. I would say that if we are moving higher, we're more than likely targeting these highs. On the weekly, we'll probably be targeting these highs right here. That's the this fair value gap right here. On the daily, yeah, on the daily, this is the swing high. So we'll probably be targeting these highs. I like that as a target. So I'm gonna set an alert on here so I can be notified when price comes into this level so we can see what the reaction to it is gonna be like. Bitcoin. I don't trade Bitcoin, but I know people like looking at it, so I'm gonna analyze it for you guys. Um, as we can see, price reacted very nicely in this monthly fair value gap right here. So we clearly should be bullish, aiming for this high on the weekly. We have traded into this fair value gap and we have definitely disrespected it. So the weekly is saying something different from the monthly because on the weekly we're actually moving lower and we also have a fair value gap moving lower. On the daily, there is no fair value gap in the current leg. So I would say that it's very, very likely that if we are to move lower on Bitcoin, we're gonna come into this fair value gap and move lower, or we're just gonna continue moving lower and then probably create a fair value gap right here. Right? I have no current context to look at on Bitcoin. So during the week, if you guys do see a daily fair value gap lower, um, maybe something like this, something like that, you guys do see a fair value gap right like this, like fair value gap lower, price comes back into it, you can probably trade that. That would be fine for a trade lower. Um, Going to look at the crosses. We're gonna first look at AUD. Uh, the AUD news is on. We got the AUD news on. One second, guys. Okay. Okay, so we got the AUD news on Tuesday. So I'll be looking for trades on AUD pairs on Tuesday. Um, Looking at this, we can see we are reacting to the monthly. We are definitely pushing higher. We did react to this, but the current month does not seem to be wanting to move lower. It looks like more of a consolidation on the weekly. We do have this. We do have this very small fair value gap here, which I won't mark out because it's really, really tiny. I rather see my fair value gap at least a little bit more size. Um, we did, however, react to this order block, very much like AU. On daily, you can see that we currently have in a fair value gap higher, right? Looking at this, I would say that we're looking for overall. Well, we haven't fully reacted to this actually, so it's very hard to draw a bias from this because we haven't really fully reacted to this. So I will probably wait to see what Monday says fully before I fully commit to any bias on this, right? I would say overall bullish, but I would need to wait to see how price reacts in this area. So if Monday trades higher, then on Tuesday, I definitely want to see bullish price action, right? Um, let me do actually is let me just get these markups and place them in the Discord so the guys can look at them. Uh, on the Canadian, mm, very choppy here, so you can see how choppy that we are here. A very big consolidation on the weekly. There isn't much to look at all. On the daily, we have no fair value gaps. So looking at this, I would say I have absolutely no bias. So this is very low probability price action. Even though that we're having Canadian news, I would look at the Canadian pairs without any bias from the Canadian index. So I'm gonna put in no bias trade. As for euro, on the monthly, we have suspected this Ferrari gap. We had this bullish candle. There's not much to look at here. On the weekly, we have no Ferrari gaps to look at here either. On the daily, we have reacted to this, but after reacting to this, we have not really created a fair value gap lower. We have traded below the lows, but there is no real fair value gap lower as yet. Um, I will also put for this no bias run. simply because we did not follow through from this with a new fair value gap, which is what I would love to see. If we did, I would say that we are overall bearish. But since we haven't, I would say that we just have no bias from the index itself. So we're gonna go over the pairs. The only pair that we have, we don't even really have bias for AUD, honestly. We don't even really have bias for AUD. The only pair that we have no bias on any of these pairs. So we're gonna go through the pairs and look at what they have to offer without drawing bias from the indexes. So we're gonna look at the monthly on ACAD. Um, we do have, we are creating this fair value gap right here. Also respecting this high. On the weekly, we can definitely see that we have fair value gap right here that we could possibly trade back into. Now we have already traded into this, so definitely consolidating here, having some very strong rejections from the highs. On the daily, you can see that we have currently fully disrespected this fair value gap, which means that we are looking to trade to this low, at least, but we have no daily fair value gap to trade from as yet. So I can say that we may trade lower. It's very possible that we trade lower and then trade back up and then trade lower. This is a side possibility for AUD CAD. Um, for AUD Chef, let me actually verify what days we have news for CAD this week. So CAD news is on Monday and Tuesday. Yeah, we can definitely see that happen. AUD Chef. We seem to be reacting from this monthly fair value gap that we're in right now. Currently in a monthly fair value gap. I don't think I did realize this prior. On the weekly, we have some fair value gaps moving lower into that monthly fair value gap. So we could see some potential consolidation here while the market decides which direction it really wants to go in. On the daily, now if we're trading AUD Chef from this monthly fair value gap, I would personally be waiting for a daily fair value gap to execute. So really and truly, this would be an execution for me. Like this would be a trade for me. So I would actually trade this setup right here. And I will put this over here. When the market does open, I will more than likely actually trade this setup. What you guys can do instead of trading this setup, which is the more risky trade, you could wait for price to actually come into this fair value gap right here. As you can see, price didn't close above. So there's a high chance that price does come back into this fair value gap on the daily. So you can wait for this and then move higher and enter off the 1 hour. I'm actually mark this out. Um, Mark that out. Um, Definitely like this setup right here. I'm gonna put this into the signals group. Let me just get these parameters, put them into the signals group. All right. Um, Definitely like this. So looking at AJ now on the monthly, we're moving higher, but there are just no fair value gaps to trade from for the monthly. On the weekly, also moving higher. We reacted to this fair value gap here, creating a new fair value gap potentially. next week. On the daily, we have a fair value gap right here that we could possibly trade back into. It is a breakaway gap, but we could possibly trade back into this. If we do get that, we can probably get higher prices off here. Or we could possibly create a fair value gap higher from current price action and then trade back into it. So we're going to be looking at that. The other AUD pairs, Euro AUD. Oh, AUD NZD actually. I am currently in this swing trade. This is from this monthly fair value gap right there. So we have a big monthly fair value gap right there. On the weekly, you can see that we did have this fair value gap, which we did overtake last week. On the daily, I entered just like the entry from before. After the fair value gap was created, I entered right here, stop loss below this low, and I've been riding through the drawdown and currently in profit. So how you guys could get back into this move would be from here. I'll probably wait for some form of entry confirmation. So if we have to get in here, I would say that we wait for this low to get taken on the day of news. This low to get taken and then price to move higher. If price does not react from this, then I would be looking to get back in. I probably wouldn't use this fair value gap simply for the reason that this fair value gap is basically two defenses. Yeah, I wouldn't really use that. I would say price needs to go higher from here. If price doesn't go higher from this fair value gap, this one is not really high capability, so I wouldn't say look for an entry in here. Okay, look at your AUD monthly. We did react to this very nicely, but we have been consolidating ever since. On the weekly, in the current weekly leg, we have no fair value gap, so nothing to trade from, but we are definitely going lower, reacting to this fair value gap over here. On the daily, we can see us come back into this fair value gap and potentially react to this, or if not reacting here, we can definitely react right here if we do continue lower. Definitely a nice looking setup. As for GBP AUD on the monthly, okay, oh, this is what this, okay. On the monthly, again, we don't have much context to play with. On the weekly, we have overtaken this weekly fair value gap, which means that we are going bearish. On the daily, I would say that we're targeting this low right here. On the daily, um, I would say that we're gonna come back into this fair value gap. If we are going to continue lower, I would love to see a trade from this gap right here. Just a minute on that. Okay, so we've done the AUD pairs. We're gonna go through the Canadian pairs right now. So CAD Chef, let's start with this. On the monthly, we have a fair value gap that we're trading out of right here, reacting to this monthly fair value gap. On the weekly, we're about to get into a weekly fair value gap, so we have to be wary of that. If we are to trade lower, we will trade lower from this weekly fair value gap. If the monthly is following through, we can see that we already have a daily fair value gap higher. So this would also be a trade for me. I actually like these setups. Doesn't seem that it would be a 4-2-1. So I'm gonna say that we don't take this trade. I'm actually like add it to my journal, but I'm gonna say that we stay out of this one since we are already looking at another one on Chef, I believe. Yeah, on Chef. Since we're looking at on Chef, let's see. Let's actually see which one has less resistance to the upside. So this is a monthly candle coming right back down. So this is our next target. Actually, a good lesson of picking the right pair. Sorry about my background noise if you guys can hear that. Um, so if you look at CAD Chef and A Chef, you can see that we currently have, well, somewhat of a gap, or we're creating a fair value gap going lower. It doesn't have to be created, but we are creating one. On A Chef, we really have much less of a gap. So I would say that A Chef is the high probability pair right now. So I would take the trade off A Chef and not trade CAD Chef. I'm gonna journal this. However, definitely gonna journal it. I'm gonna take the trade, but I'm gonna journal it. Um, so what I would say is we wait for this daily fair value gap, or a daily fair value gap to get traded into, and then we can take a 1 hour trade off that. So basically looking for confirmation. Since we're gonna enter this one with less confirmation, I'm gonna put this way. Alright, so CAD JPY on the monthly, not much to see, definitely bullish on the weekly. We've created a fair value gap right here on the daily. Could see higher prices from this. Chances are we won't actually trade back into this, considering this is a breakaway gap. But we can definitely monitor and see how this does play out next week on the share JPY, Euro CAD. Get into the monthly, there isn't much to see right here. Consolidation on the weekly. We definitely have this weekly fair value gap lower right here that we can look to trade lower from. This is also a breakaway gap. So chances are price won't actually come back into this before reaching the draw liquidity, which is right here. On the daily, we can see that price has traded lower. We have this very nice value gap right here that we could possibly trade back into, maybe on Monday or Tuesday, to get some lower prices. So I definitely like this. This looks very clear. EuroCAD definitely looks very, very clear. I like EuroCAD. Chef, monthly. So all the chef pairs seem to be in a monthly fair value gap. However, so far, A-Chef seems to be like the nicest looking one. As you can see on E-Chef, we also have a very, very large monthly candle going down, which is not the best thing to see coming into your POI. In the weekly, we definitely have this fair value gap, very fair value gap right here, directly in our face, that we have to contend with. It's possible that these pairs do very well consolidate on the daily. We won't even need the daily. The daily is now fair value gap higher as yet. We're probably just gonna have to wait and see what happens between the weekly and the monthly, because we this is not the price action that we prefer to trade. I would definitely say the monthly comes first, but we need to wait for more confirmation, wait for the daily to actually react and give us some fair value gaps to see exactly which direction we're going into. I'm actually flag this so we can look at it. Euro GDP, definitely moving lower with all these weeks higher. We've been expecting higher, respecting supply and moving lower. We have this weekly fair value gap. We could possibly look to trade lower from. Sorry about that, guys. Um, on the daily, okay, I did take this trade last week. Actually, this fair value gap higher into the weekly fair value gap. That trade hit target already. So we're definitely looking for a trade out of this weekly fair value gap, potentially lower. Flag this up. Um, EJ on the monthly, not much to see. On the weekly, we've already reacted to this fair value gap over here, creating a new fair value gap currently. On the daily, we're currently creating a fair value gap higher, but we haven't really followed through on it. So we can just flag it so we can look at it during the week. EN, On the monthly, we have creating a fair value gap lower. On the weekly, we have the only fair value gap that we have that we could trade from is potentially up here. The daily, we just reacted to this and we have not really followed through on it. So I would say that this is what we're looking toward to trade lower. On the daily, we would need more confirmation to trade anything else. Our last set of pairs, I believe, were euros, right? So we did AUD, Canadian, and euro. Yeah. So we have looked at everything that we need to look at. I'm gonna go through a recap of all what we did look at. So EU looking to trade lower, definitely from either this or that, taking out all that liquidity. GU looking for the same thing, so a trade lower, fully to this weekly low, to that drawn liquidity right there. UJ, our drawn liquidity would actually be this high, so not really looking for a trade into this fair value gap, maybe a move higher, trade back higher. This would be preferred. um, on gold, we want to see a fair value gap get created right here, so, and then a trade lower. On silver, we want to see a very similar thing, fair value gap get created, trade lower. On oil, we want to see price trade into this and then move higher potentially. Price could also decide to come lower. No, actually, if price does fail to react from this, I would not be looking for any more bullish pricing from oil. AUD CAD, we already have what we're looking for, so potentially a move lower, value gap created here, and then go back up into the fair value gap and trade lower. AJ, looking for price to come into this fair value gap, or price could also move a bit higher, create a fair value gap and then move higher. That'll be fine. For EA, definitely looking for price to trade into this or that and then come lower. Ooh. GA, looking for the same thing, price to come back into this. It's a bit clearer as into where we're gonna come back and then trade lower. CAD share, the CAD pairs are definitely looking real good. CAD chef, we're gonna wait for a reaction in the daily zone before we move, or reaction to the weekly zone before we take an entry. So we're gonna wait for price to come in there and confirm it. CAD J, potentially we might get something like this. I don't think we'll trade it back into this breakaway gap. That is not the highest probability thing to do, because that would mean that price is not as strong as we do think it is. Euro CAD, we're definitely looking for this trade back up into this and a trade low. This would be a very, very nice looking trade. Euro Chef, this is another one where we could possibly have consolidation. We're just looking for the daily reaction, daily fair value gaps in either direction, and the confirmation would be fine. EG is another one that is more clear, so we can come into this and then trade lower, probably for 4 hour fair value gap lower. EJ, on EJ, we're looking at price moving overall higher. We'd love to see price do this, come a bit higher, create a fair value gap, trade lower, and then continue higher. On EN, and the weekly is up here, so we're definitely looking to get into that weekly. To get into that weekly, we could possibly create daily fair value gaps higher, trade back into them, and then have something like this. Then move lower. This would actually be nice if we could get that. But we're gonna see what the market does during the week. As of current, I see no messages in the chat, so I'm gonna go ahead and end this live stream. If you guys have any questions, you can always put them in the live stream in the comments after the stream is posted, and I will look at them and get to them in the next live stream. If you are in the Discord, you can put the comments into the live stream area in the Discord, the live stream questions area, and I will answer them on the next live stream. So this is all for today, guys. Thank you for joining. Thank you all for watching if you have watched after the fact. and I hope you have a wonderful week next week.